here's the truth nobody tells you about toxic relationships. By the time you realize you're in one, you've already lost pieces of yourself you didn't even know were gone. I'm talking about those small moments that don't seem like much at first. The comment that makes you second-guess your memory. The friend you stopped talking to because it was just easier. The feeling in your gut that something's wrong, but you can't explain why. And here's the thing. Toxic people are masters at making you think it's all in your head. But what if I told you there are 5 specific patterns that show up in almost every toxic relationship, and once you see them, you can't unsee them? So let's break this down. We're going to go through the 5 biggest red flags that scream toxic relationship, and I'm not talking about the obvious stuff like yelling or throwing things. I'm talking about the sneaky manipulation tactics that slowly chip away at who you are, the kind that makes you feel crazy for even questioning what's happening. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly what to look for, whether it's in your own relationship or someone you care about. Red flag number 1 is gaslighting, and this one is huge because it messes with your reality. Gaslighting is when someone makes you doubt your own memory, perception, or sanity. They twist things around so much that you end up questioning yourself instead of them. Let me give you a real example. Imagine you tell your partner that something they said hurt your feelings. Instead of apologizing or even acknowledging it, they say something like, "I never said that, you're making things up," or "You're too sensitive. I was just joking." They flip the script so fast that suddenly you're the one apologizing for being hurt. That's gaslighting. Another classic example is when you bring up something that bothered you, and they act like it never happened. You remember it clearly, maybe it was a promise they broke or something mean they said. But when you mention it, they look at you like you're losing it. "That didn't happen," they say with complete confidence. "You're remembering it wrong." And because they're so convincing, you start to doubt yourself. Maybe you did remember it wrong. Maybe you are being too sensitive. No, that's exactly what they want you to think. Gaslighting also shows up in smaller ways that add up over time. They might deny saying something hurtful even when you heard it with your own ears. They'll tell you that your feelings are invalid or that you're overreacting when you have every right to be upset. They'll make you feel like you're the problem for having basic emotional needs. And the worst part? You start to believe them. You start to think maybe you are too much, maybe you are crazy, maybe you are the issue. But here's what you need to understand. If someone consistently makes you question your reality, that's not love, that's manipulation. The reason gaslighting is so damaging is because it doesn't just hurt in the moment. It changes how you see yourself. You stop trusting your own judgment. You second-guess every feeling you have. You become dependent on the other person to tell you what's real and what's not. And that's exactly where they want you, confused, doubtful, and easy to control. If you find yourself constantly questioning your memory or apologizing for things that aren't your fault, that's a massive red flag. Red flag number 2 is isolation and control, and this one is subtle at first. It doesn't start with them telling you to cut off your friends and family. It starts with small comments that plant seeds of doubt. Your friends don't really care about you like I do. Your family doesn't understand you the way I do. Why do you need to spend time with them when you have me? At first, it might even feel flattering. They want you all to themselves, right? That must mean they really love you. Wrong. That means they're trying to isolate you. Here's how it plays out. They start making it difficult for you to see other people. Maybe they pick a fight right before you're supposed to meet up with friends. Maybe they guilt trip you for choosing to spend time with family instead of them. "I guess I'm just not important to you," or "You always pick them over me." They make you feel bad for having other relationships in your life. So eventually, you start canceling plans. You stop reaching out to people. You convince yourself it's easier to just stay with your partner and avoid the drama. And before you know it, you're isolated. Your support system is gone, and they're the only person left in your world. Control goes hand in hand with isolation. They want to know where you are at all times. They check your phone, your messages, your social media. They question who you're talking to and why. They need to approve your clothes, your friends, your decisions. It starts small, "Can you text me when you get there?" and escalates into constant surveillance. "Why didn't you answer my call? Who were you with? Why are you dressed like that?" They frame it as care, but it's control. They're making sure you can't do anything without their permission. And here's the thing about isolation and control. It works because it happens gradually. You don't wake up one day and realize you have no friends left. It's a slow process where you make small compromises that seem reasonable at the time. But each compromise takes you further away from your independence and deeper into their control. You stop going out because it's not worth the argument. You stop posting on social media because they'll question everyone who likes your photos. You stop being yourself because it's exhausting to defend every little thing you do. The scary part is that once you're isolated, it becomes even harder to leave. You don't have anyone to turn to. You don't have anyone to validate your feelings or tell you that what's happening isn't normal. You're trapped in this bubble where the toxic person is your only reference point for reality, and they use that power to keep you exactly where they want you. If your partner makes it hard for you to maintain relationships outside of them, or if you feel like you need permission to live your life, that's a huge red flag. Red flag number 3 is about how they react to boundaries. Healthy relationships have boundaries. Toxic relationships don't. When you try to set a boundary with a toxic person, they either ignore it completely, get angry, or make you feel guilty for having one. Let's say you tell them you need some alone time to recharge. A healthy partner would respect that. A toxic partner? They'll make it about them. Why don't you want to be with me? Am I not enough for you? You're pushing me away. They turn your reasonable need into an attack on them. Boundaries are basically your way of protecting your mental and emotional health. Things like, don't yell at me, I need space when I'm upset, or, please don't go through my phone. These aren't unreasonable requests. These are basic respect. But toxic people see boundaries as obstacles to their control. So they push back, they test your limits. They do the exact thing you asked them not to do, just to see if you'll enforce the boundary or back down. And if you do back down, they learn that your boundaries don't really matter. Another way this shows up is through love bombing after they cross a line. They violate your boundary, you get upset, and suddenly they're showering you with affection and promises to change. They'll say everything you want to hear. They'll be the perfect partner for a few days or weeks. And just when you start to relax and think things are getting better, they do it again. It's a cycle. Violate boundary, love bomb, repeat. And each time, you get more exhausted and less likely to stand up for yourself. Toxic people also use your boundaries against you. If you say you need time alone, they'll accuse you of being distant or not caring. If you say you don't like being yelled at, they'll tell you you're too sensitive. If you ask them not to make decisions without you, they'll say you're controlling. They flip it so that your boundaries become character flaws. And over time, you stop setting boundaries altogether because it's not worth the fight. You just accept whatever they do and hope for the best. But relationships without boundaries aren't relationships, they're power imbalances. If your partner can't respect simple requests about how you want to be treated, get out. Red flag number 4 is blame shifting and lack of accountability. Toxic people are never wrong, ever. No matter what they do, it's always someone else's fault. Usually yours. Let's say they forget your birthday. A normal person would apologize and make it up to you. A toxic person? They'll blame you for not reminding them, or say you're making too big a deal out of it, or bring up that one time you forgot something years ago. They turn it around so fast that suddenly you're defending yourself instead of them apologizing. This pattern shows up in every conflict. You bring up something that hurt you, and instead of listening, they list everything you've ever done wrong. Well, what about when you? Or, you always? Or, you're one to talk? They deflect. They dodge. They do anything except take responsibility for their actions. And it's exhausting because you can never have a productive conversation. Every issue becomes a competition of who's been hurt more or who's messed up worse. Blame shifting also happens when they make their bad behavior your fault. They cheated? It's because you didn't give them enough attention. They yelled at you? It's because you made them angry. They broke your trust? It's because you drove them to it. They take zero ownership of their choices and put the entire burden on you. It's a manipulation tactic that keeps you in a constant state of guilt and shame. You start to believe that if you just tried harder, loved better, or did things differently, they wouldn't treat you this way. But that's not true. Their behavior is their responsibility, not yours. Red flag number 5 is emotional manipulation and guilt trips. This is when they use your emotions against you to get what they want. They know what buttons to push. They know what makes you feel guilty, or scared, or obligated. And they use that knowledge to control you. Common phrases include, "If you loved me, you would," or "After everything I've done for you," or "I guess I'll just be alone then." They're making you responsible for their happiness and using your empathy against you. Guilt trips are especially effective because most people don't want to hurt others. So when someone says, "You're going to make me so sad if you do that," your instinct is to avoid causing them pain. But here's the thing, you're not responsible for managing their emotions. They are. If they can't handle you having boundaries or making your own choices without falling apart, that's their issue to work on, not yours to fix. But they make it seem like if you don't give them what they want, you're a bad person. And that's manipulation. Another form of emotional manipulation is playing the victim. No matter what happens, they're always the one who's been wronged. You could be the one hurting, but they'll find a way to make it about them. You think you're upset? Imagine how I feel. You don't understand what I'm going through. They center themselves in every situation, even when they're the one who caused the problem. It's a way of avoiding accountability while also making you feel bad for them. So instead of addressing the real issue, you end up comforting them. Threats are also manipulation, even if they're not direct. "I don't know what I'd do without you," or "I can't live if you leave me," or "You're the only good thing in my life." These statements put enormous pressure on you to stay, even if the relationship is destroying you. They're essentially saying that your freedom comes at the cost of their well-being, and for many people, that's enough to trap them. They stay out of fear, obligation, or guilt, not because they actually want to be there. Emotional manipulation makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You're constantly monitoring their mood and adjusting your behavior to keep them happy. You're censoring yourself, hiding things, and doing whatever it takes to avoid triggering them. And that's no way to live. Love shouldn't feel like a hostage situation. If you feel like you can't be honest or authentic because it might upset them, or if you're constantly being guilted into doing things you don't want to do, you're being emotionally manipulated. So those are the 5 red flags: gaslighting that makes you doubt yourself, isolation and control that cuts you off from everyone else, lack of respect for boundaries, blame shifting without accountability, and emotional manipulation through guilt trips. If you're seeing even one of these in your relationship, it's worth examining. If you're seeing multiple, it's time to seriously consider whether this relationship is actually good for you. Here's what a lot of people don't realize: you don't have to wait until it gets worse. You don't have to prove that it's bad enough to leave. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your gut. Trust that voice in your head that's been trying to tell you something's off. You deserve a relationship where you feel safe, respected, and valued. Not one where you're constantly questioning yourself, walking on eggshells, or sacrificing your happiness for someone who won't do the same for you. And if you're reading this and recognizing these signs in your relationship, please know it's not your fault. Toxic people are good at what they do. They make you think you're the problem. They make you believe you can't do better. They make you feel like you need them, but you don't. You are enough on your own. And leaving a toxic relationship, as hard as it is always better than staying in one. You might feel guilty, scared, or sad at first. That's normal. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. The freedom to be yourself again. The freedom to rebuild your life without someone constantly tearing you down. The freedom to find people who actually respect and cherish you. One more thing. If someone you care about is in a toxic relationship, be patient with them. They might not see it yet. They might defend their partner or make excuses. That's part of the manipulation. Don't give up on them. Let them know you're there when they're ready. Sometimes just knowing that someone believes you and supports you is enough to give you the strength to leave. Subscribe if this helped you see things more clearly.